Okay, welcome to episode 9, which is maths that really ran up on me, Matt Waters. One half of this podcast, Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey. I am joined by Ben Phillips, who is a little bit delicate. He drank too much wine this weekend. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I think the more worrying thing is I've got two cats just staring at me right now.
Just planning on how to destroy the audio setup for this.
They've already attacked the microphone and the headphones.
Well, that's good then. So if
We'll
Ben just disappears at any point, assume that Hydra got to him. Because we're talking about Captain America the Winter Soldier. Yeah, numbers are out. We are official. I mean, I guess Thor the Dark World had a subtitle as well. But this one's actually good.
I like to imagine that you'd actually manage to edit me back in if I did disappear for a while.
No, I'd just talk and just leave it hanging. EnterTheRealWorld.com, 2 E's in real. Before we get going, a tiny bit of admin. We have, because I'm going to be out of the country when Infinity War comes out in the UK, we had originally planned to release that episode on the 10-year anniversary on the 2nd of May. Instead, we're going to do like a 10-year retrospective on the entire MCU on that date, and we will release our Infinity War episode on May the 4th, which is when the film comes out in America. So everyone's happy anyway. There you go. But we are not there yet. We have to talk about Captain America the Winter Soldier. I say it like it's a chore. This movie is pretty goddamn good, Ben.
It is. From Avengers onwards, the Marvel Cinematic Universe hits like this really nice stride, and then Thor the Dark World's the only kind of bad one, I would say.
Yeah.
There are 4 movies here that I would say are like top 5 MCU movies.
For a long time, people were saying this is the best one. If they didn't feel Avengers was the best one, they would say this one. Otherwise, this was the best one since Avengers, all this sort of stuff. It ranks very highly on a lot of people's lists. It is a phenomenally stylish film. Shane Black obviously has his own style, but he kind of had to do a bit of a watered-down version of it for Iron Man 3, but this film just is oozing with just sort of slickness, and that is brought by the Russos, who are making their MCU debut, and they will be back a lot. You know, Anthony Mackie calls this like Avengers 1.5, and that feels quite fitting because it's a larger cast than we've had before. We've got a lot of people returning and sort of piggybacking off into Cap's movie because, you know, they can't get their own. And it's just a lot of fun. It unleashes Cap to the sort of best of his abilities, I think. Great cast, good urgency, all that good stuff. So, released April the 4th, 2014. No superhero movies had come out since Thor 2. So it's 136 minutes long, so that is the longest solo movie that we've done so far. It is just shy of the length of the Avengers, but a lot going on, lots of characters. Makes sense. I don't think it really drags that much in any real place.
It uses its length to good effect. In some ways, like the most similar it is to is like Iron Man 2, but like actually uses those extra characters in stuff that have been seeded in other movies like to good effect, rather than just having it as like, oh, we need to set this up for something later. So here's Nick Fury. Whereas like this is, I mean, in a lot of ways, this is like the best use of S.H.I.E.L.D. in any Marvel movie.
Yeah. They made it on a budget of $177 million. $37 million more than they spent on Captain America 1. Not a huge amount more. A similar amount of money they spent on Thor 2. They brought in $714 million, which is more than double what Captain America 1 made. It's the third highest so far. You know, we are used to these movies making like $1 billion, but not actually that many of them do. It just sort of seems like they all do. So that is still quite a large number, and I think the Avengers helped with this quite a lot, because a lot of people, as we discussed on our Captain America First Avenger episode, probably ducked this because of the name, because of the stigma of the character. They go see Avengers. Avengers is pretty dope. Cap isn't completely lame, though his costume might be.
It also definitely helps that it's like set in the modern day.
Yes.
Very firmly. Like it's got the benefit of it not being like, oh, I'm sure Captain America isn't going to be important going forward because it's set in 1940s, whereas this one is, I mean, apart from, I don't know, it feels like the most contiguous with the Avengers.
Yeah,
I mean, so far.
We talked about how all these solo movies is a problem where are the Avengers. This one feels the most kind of shared universe, ongoing story-ish of the solo franchises. Probably because he's directly involved with S.H.I.E.L.D. and everyone in the next one. But yeah, as I said, directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, best known for Arrested Development, Community, and Happy Endings, which got cancelled too soon, damn it. Joss Whedon directed a scene at the end, obviously. Written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who did Captain America 1, who did Thor 2, and are the Marvel Golden Boys now. And Chris McKenna, also of Community, came in and did some jokes for them. So it's a Community love fest up in here, and that will come up later. So they announced the sequel before the first film even came out. They were that confident in, I guess, the vision of these writers, and I don't know, maybe they had the Russos on deck quite early, I don't know, but they considered George Nolfi, who did the Adjustment Bureau, and F. Gary Gray, who chose to do Straight Outta Compton instead of this. But lucky us, because we got the Russos, who impressed Kevin Feige so much with the Paintball two-parter that they brought him on. Huge influence from a load of political thrillers, Parallax View, Marathon Man, All the President's Men, all that kind of stuff. They liked the bank robbery scene from Heat, as does anyone who's ever seen a film. They liked the Mission Impossible vault scene, just anything where it's sort of like really high stakes, characters we care about, impossible situations, that kind of thing, they were very influenced by. And they took a big influence from Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America, which I'm sure Ben will be talking about in a moment. They met with him, picked his brain about the character of the Winter Soldier and all that good stuff. It was a coincidence that the Edward Snowden NSA leaks sort of came out during pre-production, and then they just really doubled down on all that stuff. They decided after all that came out, like drone strikes and secret intelligence and all of that. And it is a huge plot point of this movie is that they bring down S.H.I.E.L.D., and that was a suggestion from one Kevin Feige, of all people. So take that, television. We'll get to that. Hawkeye was in the script at one point, but they cut him because his role wasn't like significant enough. I think there was going to be a staged fight scene between Cap and Hawkeye that was sort of playing to the cameras, and they just cut it all together and just sort of gave his stuff to Black Widow, really. I think that's a good decision. There's a lot of people in this that probably couldn't have handled another one. And then after reading the script of Age of Ultron, they altered how some of these characters end their journey. So Ben, you talked about the kind of pre-Captain America First Avenger history of this character. I don't know if a huge amount of significance happened between these two films, but what is significant is what Ed Brubaker did and this Winter Soldier arc, because it is heavily based on it. So you talk about what you want, really, but you've got some options there.
I mean, there's one of those. There's three, or there were three, kind of like fundamental truths back in the days of comic books, which were that there are only three characters who will never ever get brought back to life. Jason Todd, Bucky Barnes, and Uncle Ben are the three characters that will never come back to life.
Two of them are alive.
Two of them are alive again, which I think says a lot. But yeah, Ed Brubaker basically broke one of the cardinal rules of comics by bringing back Bucky Barnes, who has been dead ever since Stan Lee brought him back, and basically he's been like a defining part of the character. Like, he would show up in those kind of like World War II flashback stories as Cap's sidekick in the kind of very historic sense of what a comic book sidekick is. Like, he's very much kind of like Robin. Like, I'm fairly sure Bucky Barnes is, if not influenced, like very obviously like similar in that kind of like big man, and then he teams up with a small child with questionable underwear. Yeah, and so basically Ed Brubaker brought him back, and he brought him back as a brainwashed Russian assassin in kind of like his groundbreaking 2005 starting run on Captain America, which ran for 6 years and ended in 2011, just as the first Captain America movie was coming out. In fact, I think like they rebooted it for one last hurrah. He did about 11 issues and then left at the end of that. But yeah, Winter Soldier was like this massive part of it, and Bucky Barnes was a huge defining part. Like, he eventually takes up the mantle of Captain America by the end of the run. Yeah. But like, this movie basically takes the very early part of that run, which is Cap coming to terms with the fact that this man he's thought has been dead for, I mean, at that point, 60, 70 years, is alive and has been assassinating people and been brainwashed in the interim. In the meanwhile, obviously, like, since the first Captain America movie came out, the only notable thing to happen is that Rick Remender has taken over on Captain America and gone very different. Ed Brubaker's stuff is all very spy and international thriller, which obviously is a massive influence over this, whereas Rick Remender's run is very sci-fi and fantasy kind of based. Like, it's all about Cap going to a different dimension, and Arnim Zola has basically like taken over this dimension, and he raises a small child to be kind of like getting out of any Arnim Zola's son, and it's all very complicated. It's good, it's not great.
I mean, I like Rick Remender. We've been over this on our X-Men podcasts, but alright, cool. So this film is set 2 years after the Avengers. Captain America Steve Rogers is still working for S.H.I.E.L.D. He's adjusting to modern life, and his world is turned upside down all over again when, as Ben said, his deceased best friend Bucky is revealed to not only be alive, but he is a Cold War assassin whose crosshairs are aimed directly at him. If that wasn't bad enough, Hydra are revealed to have infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. from its early days, leaving Steve completely unsure of who can and cannot be trusted. Who can be trusted is, the Black Widow, is Falcon, a new character we've got, is Nick Fury, maybe, is Maria Hill. So we've got a nice little ensemble here. And, I don't want to go through this scene by scene like we've been doing, or I don't have a list of 10 complaints about this movie or anything. Instead, I think the simplest way to say why this movie is good is that, I believe I said it earlier, it nails the holy trinity of action movies in that it does action, comedy, and drama. And I figured we would just sort of highlight all three of those, because you can kind of fit every scene in this movie into one of those three categories. So action, I guess, up front, as it is an action movie. I think this has the highest number of well-done action scenes of any Marvel film, so released to date, maybe?
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't go as big as Avengers does in Act 3.
No.
But, there's less talking.
Yeah.
Act 2 of Avengers is very much like the characters getting to know each other and feeling each other out and stuff like that, and the tension is built from character interactions. Whereas this movie opens with one of the best kind of opening set pieces that any of these movies have kind of opened with.
I love that stealth mission on the boat. I absolutely love it.
It's just got it really works. It feels so different to what we've seen beforehand. It actually puts Cap to good use. In a world where you have Thor and Iron Man, what use is Cap? And then you get this kind of perfect illustration of what he offers to this team. Yeah. Excellent tactical skills and just the ability to just kick ass.
Realistic. And he's engaged. You have to talk Tony into doing things, and he has his own agenda and he gets bored, and Cap is here to do missions. And it builds on what we saw in Captain America 1, where he's new to his body, he's new to his abilities, he's never really learned how to fight, so he just sneaks around. And that builds throughout that film. And we see in the Avengers that he is very gymnastically capable in, we talked about how he doesn't have enough to do in that final scene. I do his sort of sense of movement and parkour through the city, and they blend those two here, I think, very well. Yeah,
Avengers have to contrive reasons for, Cap having to do things, whereas this, it all feels very logical. He's fighting real people, and he massively outclasses them. This isn't...
Yeah.
Loads and loads of CGI aliens flying around the city. This is human beings who aren't as good as Cap.
Yeah, I love him running along the deck. You see that wide shot of the side of the boat, and he's running along the deck, and he just is taking dudes down as he goes, just moving and hitting and moving and hitting. And he has that awesome little fight scene with Georges St-Pierre, the UFC fighter, as Batroc the Leaper?
Batroc the Leaper, yeah.
Yes, a weirdly named villain.
Yeah, one of those classic villains that you never ever expect to actually be used in one of these movies, and yet they somehow manage to do it and do it well.
And it's difficult with villains because you can't have too many, but if you don't have many and they're not amazing, it's a criticism as well. And this does have quite a few, and you'd think, it's, did you need to do this? But it's a fun little scene. I think he has decent charisma for a non-actor, I think, and it's just fun. You get to see Cap in action. You get to see Black Widow in action as well, kicking ass and moving through the ship as well in her own way. It's all just really good.
I really like the kind of staging Batroc, because it is just it starts off like a fighting game almost, where it kind of pans back and it's got them flat along the thing, and
they fight left to right and right to left, it's very, very well done. The next sort of big action set piece is Nick Fury in a car. Ben, do you want to take this? Because I know you're a big fan.
This is, I don't think there's a better action scene in this movie. I think this is so terrifically done. There's a reason why this was the kind of cornerstone of the advertising going into this movie. This is the best use that Samuel L. Jackson has had in these movies to date, and is probably still to this point the best use of Samuel L. Jackson in any of these movies. It's got a terrific sense of kind of location, and it's got a lot of things going for it where they realistically kind of strip away the parts of it, and Nick Fury's going to have this awesome armored car, and the soldiers come in and they start firing their guns at it, and then they bring out the bloody massive battering ram and just start banging on the doors and stuff like that. And I don't know, there's just a sense of Fury always feels relatively in control, but you also know that he's an actual danger for this.
It's very frantic. This is their scene from Heat.
Yeah, and like as he starts driving down the freeway and all the rest of it, and he's like going through the list of things like, oh, get me Maria, and it's like, oh, communications relay's over, but well, I'll start flying the car then, and then they're just like, oh no, you can't do flight in how damaged the car is, and so he's still having to figure his way around.
Yeah,
and then it also brings us it's the first time we've ever had like a proper car chase in a Marvel movie, and
yeah, true.
It looks terrific. And again, he uses like location in DC very well. It feels like there are actual people on the road, and it's easy to do kind of like those busy car chases because you can't like stop and all the rest of it. And there's lots of people running across intersections and being hit by other oncoming traffic and stuff like that. But like it just feels all a part of like this whole of Fury being in control until we get the revelation of like the Winter Soldier coming in with the weird magnetic.
Yeah, the little landmine. Yeah, that is really well done. He's phenomenally overwhelmed, but he still gets the better of that situation. In steps the Winter Soldier, and he's down in one. And if not for his magical laser that I gather was invented in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Fury's dead. Well, that scene of the car going over while Bucky like steps out of the way, that was in all the trailers, and that's a pretty good shot. Yeah, like it's just a really well done kind of action set piece that's different to anything that's come beforehand, but still feels like the world of the Avengers that we've seen so far. This isn't people in iron suits, and this isn't people with magic hammers hitting things. This is a car chase between super spies who've got technology that are above them, and it's just really well done, really tense. You don't know where it's going, and even watching it the 5 billionth time since the movie's come out, like it still packs the same amount of punch as the first time I saw it. Yeah, and you mentioned this, and I had this written down as well. I think this is by far Samuel L. Jackson's best performance for Marvel, and like having recently watched the Phase 1 stuff with him, and then seeing this, it's night and day. He's a character here, he's acting, he's being physical, he's probably enjoying himself a lot more than he did when they were just handing him some money to turn up and do bad dialogue. I mean, like he's obviously better in the Avengers than he had been, but this is great stuff from him. And the scene immediately before and after that car chase are excellent. I think like the stuff in the apartment is great. That falls more into the drama side, but yeah, just
it's got that benefit of like in the Avengers, Nick Fury still feels like he's moving pieces around the chessboard, whereas this one feels like he's actually like in the action.
Yeah, he is a reactive element because there are things going on that he isn't aware of, and that hasn't been the case so far. I mean, the next big one is the one from this film. You prefer the car one, and maybe it might even be better, but this is the one this film is known for, that has been parodied, that was in the trailers in its entirety almost. Cap in the elevator, which is a massive nod to Civil War, the comic, where he is on the bridge of the helicarrier or whatever, and they are tasked with taking him in, and he just sort of gives them that moment to stand down if they want to, and then he just kicks everyone's ass. Yeah, so he gets in this elevator and is surrounded by his former allies, and he's, Cap isn't dumb. Like, we got a bit of that in Avengers where he's out of time, so he seems like a bit of an idiot sometimes, but it's very much not that. He is very good at reading a situation, and just the tension in that elevator scene before this really well choreographed fight in a tiny box is phenomenal, and I love that it got parodied back into Community eventually as well. That's a nice little nod.
Yeah, I mean, this is the 1A, 1B, like, action scenes in this movie, and the only reason I've got this one ranked a little bit lower than the car scene is purely because I really don't like how it kind of ends.
Yeah,
it's just I love everything in the elevator and like him getting away, but then it ends with this kind of really random like, oh, Cap takes down a CGI helicopter, and it's just like, hey, this isn't anywhere near as interesting as like him fighting 19 dudes in an elevator. Like, it's just like, because I watched it again and I watched like how they were doing it, and it was just like, this feels so much less urgent, this feels so much less competent. Like, it's like the Russos are working with CGI for the first time, and this scene is basically like they shot some landscapes and then some people put some CGI in at the end, and it's just like,
I feel as much freedom as Marvel may occasionally give filmmakers, I feel there is sort of a checklist of wants and things that they must do, and if they had the full 100% remit to just make their political thriller, scenes like this aren't in there. But it is a comic book movie. You do have to have a man on a motorbike taking down a jet occasionally.
Yeah, I know. It just.
I don't even consider that the same scene. I know it is, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like that's the only reason I'm docking it, is because but it isn't really, because like it's literally like almost like it's test footage for what this movie's going to be like at some point. But like it comes at the end. It just kind of this time watching it again, it left like a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth after how good that fight is. Like the stuff with the magnets. Like again, it's got this terrific sense of location where they're using magnets to like attach his hands. And he's managing to pull away from it and everything.
Yeah, like you said, like you talk about use of location and the chase scene feeling like very sort of real world. I feel this one does do a great job of that. It's not that comic book movies have to be realistic to be good, but I do think it goes a long way when you can create a scene that feels, or you can kind of, while sitting there watching it, get the sense of space and location and movement, and it isn't just characters wandering through a backdrop kind of thing. And it feels like a kinetic thing, and Cap is moving in real locations. I don't know, I kind of want to I want to spend most of this talking about the drama rather than these two, so it feels like we're just breezing through this movie, and that is kind of on purpose. But I'm a huge fan of the two fight scenes with Cap and Bucky. In particular, a thing they do here, which they kind of did it in the Avengers between Hawkeye and Black Widow, and they do it much better here, I think. Bucky drops a knife from one hand to the other hand when his hand is pinned by Cap to try and stab him again, and I think tiny little details like that are phenomenal. And a lot of the Marvel kind of one person versus one person fight scenes are a bit lackluster, and they kind of, because most of them are just CG things smashing into each other. They rarely have the confidence to do a full knockdown, drag out, like martial arts style fight. And I think these are some of the best ones. We talked about the one at the beginning. I think the fight between Cap and Bucky in the middle of the film is also pretty excellent. And if not for the setting of the one at the end, I think that one is pretty good as well, with him like breaking his arm and like choking him out and stuff. I think that's all good stuff.
Yeah, like it's a really nice dynamic between them. Like, it even starts in that first like scene where you meet Bucky. Like, it's a very brief fight, but it's the one where like he catches his shield and
of course. Yeah. How do you show that someone's for real? They catch either the hammer or the shield.
Yeah, exactly. Like again, it's a really nice scene, and it just kind of like plays her out because Cap gets like this feeling that he knows this person, and it doesn't come out until this scene, which it doesn't have enough Falcon to do, because he's just kind of left on top of the thing, just kind of like firing blindly into goons. But like, I love that they show Black Widow as like being really, really confident, because you've got the kind of bait and switch that she does with the audio recording of her calling in for help.
Oh yeah.
And so Bucky falls for that and like rolls a grenade underneath the car. You see it's a telephone, and then the car blows up, and then she just bounces around and like does the like awesome leg stuff to him and like puts him over. And she's about to lose. Cap comes in, and you get the kind of like the full on like these two people are equally fighting each other for fight.
At the same time, though, you talk about how she's so confident. I think Scarlett Johansson, more than anyone else in Marvel, does an incredible job of showing... Like, when she gets shot by Bucky, I think she just gets clipped or something, because she doesn't seem to show any after effects from this gunshot, but she seems to get shot. She looks very visibly, like, shocked by that, and it reminded me of what happens in Avengers with Hulk and stuff, and how she kind of, told that with her face, the sort of trauma of that. And I guess it's because she is, amongst all these sort of superpowered freaks, she's just a person. So I guess that makes sense. Or maybe it's just because she's a good actress. Maybe it's both. The action, I mean, we'll talk about the big helicarrier nonsense, I think, towards the end. But I think a lot of the ones we've gone over, like the big heavy hitters, are incredible. Like there's a great sense of urgency and pace, and both of those things go a long way. But I think the real strength of this is that, you know, they sell it on it being an action film, but really this is them having fun, making a nice little nostalgic throwback to a 70s, 80s sort of government conspiracy political thriller, and that's very telling in who they cast in Robert Redford, of course. But, you know, it's Cap versus the government, and it's unpacking who this character is, and I think the writers, Marcus and McFeely, they talked about how from the second they got hold of the character, they had been thinking about breaking him apart. And I think a huge thing that puts people off about him is they assume he is just a Boy Scout who's like, yes, government, yes, like he's just a Boy Scout, he's a policeman, he's a America, fuck yeah, type thing. And this movie shows that the character is not about... He is loyal to like the people and the idea of America. He is not just blindly loyal to big government, and that is the entire plot of the movie, as we see his distrust of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the beginning, and then that evolves into S.H.I.E.L.D. being revealed to not be what anyone thought it was, and so on. And I think the Russos do a really good job here of, it wanders off and gets a little bit comic book goofy at times, but the core tenet of what they set out to do with this political thriller, I think, is really well done.
I think the best thing about the Cap trilogy of movies is that each of them feels like a genre into itself. Like the first one is a war movie, the second one is a conspiracy thriller, and we'll get to what the third one kind of apes. It's in that kind of very meta way that it does. But yeah, this one I think is probably the most successful at using the trappings of the genre it's trying to do to make itself better.
Yeah.
Because normally in these movies, the A to B plot is just kind of fairly rote and it's all very standard stuff. But this one actually it has that sense of style. It has that sense of what the best of these movies could do. Obviously, it's never going to be hailed as a classic in the same way that so many of these 1970s kind of conspiracy thrillers are. But it knows what makes those movies work, and it uses that so very well. In the scenes that aren't the action. It's a really well done superhero movie, but then it also takes the time to understand what makes a conspiracy movie work. And that's the most important thing you get is the only way the superhero genre survives is if it's not just CGI things punching each other in the face. It's taking on different forms and adapting. And you get these two schools of thought that kind of occur from this, which is basically there are some people out there who say all superhero movies are the same, which is kind of true in that the arcs and the kind of the character beats are pretty similar across all of these movies. But what Marvel does is it injects different genres into them to make them more interesting and make them feel different, even whilst story is still pretty much the same across all of them. And that really helps. Iron Man 3 feels very different to Captain America, even though they both end, or they both have a very similar progression in terms of they're both the leads in those movies are kind of isolated from the place where they feel safest or what they've been relying on previously, and it ends with a big CGI slugfest. In those broad strokes they're the same, but the feel and the tone of them is so very, very different that they both feel good, but for different reasons.
Yeah. We talk about the conspiracy aspect and all of that stuff, and who have they got to play with but Nick Fury, as we've mentioned. And I think it does a great job of immediately sort of asking fantastic questions about the morality of Nick Fury and sort of what he's doing and why Cap is doing what he's doing. And he says that quote about he's tired of being Fury's janitor. And it's quickly revealed on this little mission onto the ship with the hostages that Black Widow has a different mission to Cap. As, she misses her rendezvous point and he's like, where are you? And then it's very quickly revealed. She is extracting some information on a USB stick, which will come up. And I like the way Fury talk. I said in Avengers how, we don't have this Widow movie, so we just have to take the little nuggets we can get. And a great little character moment is when Fury says that Cap isn't comfortable with certain things and Agent Romanoff is comfortable with everything. And it's just let's not forget, she kills people probably and does all kinds of shady shit in the name of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's Robert Redford's character that says this, so we take it with a grain of salt because he's most likely framing Nick Fury, but it is ultimately revealed that this entire sort of hostage rescue mission was a cover in order to get the data off that ship and everything. And it's very good stuff that builds off Cap's problems with Fury in Avengers, and he's still working for him. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have questions for him.
It's one of those where it plays off of story beats and elements introduced in the Avengers, but it doesn't make them feel like you need to have watched them both to understand where the characters are coming from. You can come to this movie just having seen the first Captain America movie and understand everything that Cap's reacting to. Yes, Avengers makes it better, but the themes and the threat that they're kind of building towards feel very natural and self-contained to this movie, even if they're made better by having seen the other movies in this franchise. I don't think Nick Fury is quite as effective if you go in not knowing anything about the character, but you still get a feel for what Nick Fury's doing and what his perspective on these events are, based off just that first conversation with him and Cap about, as you said, Romanov being okay with everything and Cap being only good for certain things, and then how he interacts with Robert Redford's character when they go up in the elevator to kind of meet another level of S.H.I.E.L.D. who is the kind of the more public face of it at that point.
The
Like
World Security Council, right?
Yeah.
And I like how Fury kind of turns it around on Cap, so that Cap doesn't get to be the 100% virtuous white knight. He points out that they did some pretty shady things during World War II, and Cap says, yes, we did things we weren't like proud of, but we did them to protect people. And he is wondering whether S.H.I.E.L.D. is truly protecting people, and he will ultimately be revealed to be right, so go Cap. Hayley Atwell's back, Ben, and Cap goes to visit Peggy, and she breaks my heart all over again. The Russos talk about how every old person since 1980, or like young person being made to look old, has looked the same. They, instead of using prosthetics, use CG, and just, it's devastating.
I watched that scene and I was kind of like in and out, focusing on the action scenes this time of the first part, and then this was like the first scene that kind of like drew me in. I was just like, oh god, you're so good, and you're making my heart break, and the room got dusty is what the implication is here. Whilst watching that scene, like just a lot of dust, like because when she shows up in that kind of like 1950s throwback video that they do, and you get the kind of like that, you get the thing where she's like, oh, I met my future husband because of what Cap did, and like she helped found S.H.I.E.L.D. and
oh god, when he says that he's half the reason he stays with S.H.I.E.L.D. is because she founded it, it's like, now it all makes sense, and it's sad.
Yeah, I mean, Agent Carter kind of gives a different feel for like what happens there, but that's neither here nor there.
Fuck TV, we're Kevin Feige boys. It's so good.
Yeah, like it's nice that she came back. Like it's one of those things where like you knew that she wasn't going to come. The only way that Hayley Atwell could have been a continuing part of this movie franchise would be if
a third character went in the ice.
No, I was more like her great niece looks identical to Peggy.
Okay.
And then you get.
Well, we'll get to that.
That's the only way you do it, is like they look identical, and it's just kind of like, oh bullshit. Like, why didn't you cast someone else?
Oh god! And at the end, when she, it's revealed she has Alzheimer's, and she recognizes him again after they've been talking. It's like, oh my god, fuck you, Marvel. Give me a fight scene so I can stop weeping like a child. All very good stuff. So I mentioned it briefly earlier, when Nick Fury comes to Cap's house after barely surviving his little encounter with the Winter Soldier, I think that is really, really well done. When he's writing on his phone, like, microphones everywhere essentially, and they're having this conversation about how his wife threw him out, and they're kind of trying to have a moment, but while talking in code, but while Cap is pissed at him. I think it's really well done.
Because like the audience know there's something up, but then you're sat there kind of like wondering, like, do we know Nick Fury well enough to actually know whether or not he's got a wife?
Is he married? Is this a real story that he's just co-opting?
Yeah, like it's that really weird moment where, like, the first time I watched that scene, I'm still this time where I'm just kind of go like, is Nick Fury starting this with the truth, or is
could both of these things be true?
Yeah, like you almost forget that, like, oh no, he's just been fighting for his life and like his ribs are broken and all the rest of the stuff. And you just kind of go like, no, his wife might have actually chucked him out for like what he does. Like that seems very realistic for the kind of life that Nick Fury leads. But yeah, it's really well done, and I'm just going to keep on saying that stuff in this movie is really well done.
It is really well done. It's a well thought out. The biggest problem with Thor, as we said, is just it's such a mess because of how rushed it was. This feels like they got time, and that they had this story pinned, and I know they did because I did research. They had this story pinned down for years before they made it, and they just took care in doing it.
It almost feels like this is a movie that they knew they wanted to get to when they were making First Avenger. Like, First Avenger is as good as it is almost by like luck, because like Captain America World War II stories are like, you have to do them, but like sometimes they're not what you want.
They got away with it.
Yeah.
But they filled it with a ton of heart and a ton of good characters, and it's let down by action. But then this is where it was always going. Yeah,
like it's like this is the more interesting phase for Cap, is the all-American hero who's coming out of like the era where you look back on it and it's all about the good guys versus the bad guys. Like World War II is, as horrific as it is, a very clear-cut war between good people and bad people.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
There's no debate. There's no the Nazis were misunderstood.
Yeah, there are. You can have debates about like whether or not certain forces used too much force at the end of the war, but like taking down Nazis was a good thing.
Yes, still is, turns out.
Still is. Yeah, and so when you get to this one where you take this symbol of American patriotism and you put them into this kind of murky, the good guys are the bad guys, everything is morally grey kind of story, it makes it just that more interesting, because you have to take this character who is fundamentally good and coming out of this era of black and white, who's having to grapple with these shades of grey.
And that's the whole reason you, as you said, I'm just repeating your point back to you really, but the whole reason you do the war thing and you do this character that is in theory whiter than white and just Boy Scout and old-timey Americana, because he helps shine a spotlight on modern day, very realistic, like very topical stuff with secret drone strikes and black ops and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, and part of that, as you mentioned and as I mentioned, Cap adapting to the modern world, and it's not a fish out of water story like we saw in Thor. He's not just constantly bumbling and being, whimsical turns of phrase and all that. There is a bit of that in here, but they play it with seriousness and maturity and sadness as you see this character trying to get to grips with everything. And he adapts really quickly. If he didn't, he'd just sit in a corner and cry and he wouldn't be a superhero. But just stuff like him visiting an exhibit to himself in a museum is such a haunting story beat, and it's so obvious, but it's I'm so glad they did it, because it's so good, like him walking around it like a ghost.
It's that moment of I can't relive this, and here is this monument to my life and my time that I never got to see through, and here are all the costumes of the people that I knew, and here are video clips of the people who are probably dead, and it's that what inspires him to go look at Peggy, but it's still that it's the sense of melancholy. He understands that he is a cultural figure in that moment, and it's up to him to be something more, even if what he's doing is off the records, and he's not in movies being shown as propaganda anymore. He is doing something equally as important, if more secretive, in this modern era.
All of this is a sort of plotline cut from the Avengers. They filmed that one scene that we referred to in the Avengers, and I'm glad that they got to do it here, because you can't ignore it. The dude missed so much time, and one of the ways they do that is, he meets Falcon at the beginning of the movie, and he recommends him something he recommends him an album to kind of catch up on everything. And we see Cap's little notebook. And Cap has a little book of things that he needs to find out about and experience to sort of get a sense of what he's missed. And this is a very cute little thing they did, because depending on what country you live in, unless you bought this movie on Blu-ray in the UK, in which case you get the American version, you get different items on Cap's list. I think every single version has the moon landing and I think the Beatles or something like that. But, depending on where you are, you have different sort of celebrities or sportsmen or major events in your country's history. I think the UK version's got Sherlock and stuff like that.
It's got Sherlock, it's got Doctor Who, and also for some reason it's got the 1966 World Cup win. And it's just why would Cap want to watch that?
Because that's for us. Why would Cap want to look up an obscure Korean athlete? I think there's 26 different cuts of this movie, which has to be a record, but they had to deliver all these different versions on day one, and it is cute.
It is cute, but the ones in America do make sense. Watching it again, it's okay, I can understand Cap watching I Love Lucy and Cap watching the moon landing and stuff like that. Those feel like cultural touchstones that probably would work for Cap, especially because I Love Lucy started 10 years after the war ended and stuff like that. So that's probably a nice catch up for him and everything. But just the idea of Cap watching the 1966 England winning the World Cup, it's just would you have any stake in this game? This isn't.
He cares.
This is not.
He cares.
He just wants to watch it with Peggy.
Yeah, why would he look up Ferrari winning Formula? Oh, never mind.
Was that in the German Cup?
In the Italian one, Ferrari.
Oh, the Italian one even.
Ferrari. Wow, we're such manly men. It reminded me of that scene in Austin Powers where he's going down the list of people he knows and writing how they died or whatever. Anyway, very different tonally. That's all good stuff. He revisits his old training base while trying to unravel this Hydra thread. I promise that whole discussion is coming. And can't decide if it's good or it's a smidge too far that he's seeing himself and he's looking at himself and all that. I don't know, but going back there and feeling that and breathing that air again Must have been quite something for Steve. I do love that he figures out which building they need to go to because he knows every army regulation there is, and he realises there's an munitions building too close to the barracks or whatever. I just like it when Cap figures things out, to be honest.
The one takeaway I had from him kind of like watching himself run past, and the very weird moment where like he looks up at the flagpole and you go like, are they implying that this is the same flagpole that he pulled down in the first one? Because we're in a completely different location. Like,
well, they built buildings around it.
But they figure out how to fix the awful chin CGI.
Yeah, that's true.
Strap on the bottom of his chin, and you get rid of the problem of Chris Evans' chin being too big for whatever person they chose for the.
I can just imagine some frantic like tech boy sitting there like, can you reduce the chin anymore? I've already reduced it like 200%. His chin is too big.
I also think on the track of like in this movie there is one other scene where they kind of like throw back to skinny Chris Evans, but they don't CGI it. It's the one that's all forced perspectives with Bucky after the funeral, and so you've got these very awkward moments where like Sebastian Stan has to like reach down to touch him, but he's like really close, so it's just like these just weird movements he makes just to make. All they've done is they just put Chris Evans in like a baggy jacket to cover up the fact that he's like absolutely ripped, rather than just going like, oh, the CGI would cost way too much money. Here, just wear this size 15, 16, 17 jacket or whatever. And
we'll just shoot you from the waist up. Yeah, it'll be fine. Good stuff. I guess this is a continuity thing. It comes into drama, but I think there's a fair amount of continuity in this. We said how it feels the most kind of... It feels like we're very much still in the main Marvel storyline, and we're not just off in a corner. And the biggest thing is that we get this reveal that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been controlled by Hydra, or Hydra has a big enough presence within it to influence the world in a significant way. And it goes back years. I will say the explanation is dumber than I remember, that they just invited Zola over and then, oh, weird, Hydra took us over. That makes them sound pretty dumb. But the reveal was pretty shocking. I didn't know anything about this when I went in. I know you got the Mandarin thing spoiled for you. Did you manage to witness this, not knowing what was going to happen? I did manage to witness this, not knowing what was going to happen going in. I think I knew it was going to be something big because I was watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the same time, and they were kind of like massively hyping up, oh, everything's going to change after Captain America comes out, and it's like, something's going to happen with S.H.I.E.L.D. then. So like I was going in guessing that like something big has to happen to S.H.I.E.L.D., but I don't think I went in getting that it was going to be quite as like a third of S.H.I.E.L.D. is evil and is going to turn on everyone else kind of thing. Like what was not what I was expecting from this movie. And they whisper their secret club meeting to each other in there. It's like, would you really say Hail Hydra like out loud if you were in Hydra? Like, yes, we're getting away with it. They memed it so hard. It's a huge thing they did, like continuity wise. Like they didn't just establish S.H.I.E.L.D. fully, but coming off Avengers, where S.H.I.E.L.D. is kind of the glue that brings it all together. They're the resources, they're the people, they support the Avengers. And then we're like, oh, well, S.H.I.E.L.D. is so corrupt, it's all just going to have to be burned down now. Well, they have a show on the air called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. As an aside, like, I have only seen 1.5 seasons of that. I wasn't loving the first half of it. When they start ramping up towards this and the execution and fallout from this reveal, it is by far the best stuff I ever saw from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, members of the main ensemble being in Hydra, potentially, and one of them very much is. I thought all that was really well done, and I thought they did a remarkably good job of handling what had to be an enormous hurdle that was thrown their way. We're like, oh yeah, your show all about S.H.I.E.L.D.? Yeah, fuck S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, well, you have to imagine, like, when Joss Whedon, like, pitched this idea, Kevin Feige came to him and said, like, we've got this script written that's going to burn it all to the ground, like, halfway through your first season. Say that, Jeff Loeb. So, yeah, I mean, it's a huge moment, and obviously it's a moment that very much dovetails away from, like, what the comics were getting at, but I think it makes it feel that much more weighty. This movie becomes more important to Phase 2 because of, like, this moment. Not only because of, like, how it ties into Age of Ultron and how the beginning of that movie is all about, like, taking down the remnants of Hydra, but because this one feels like it's the most ingrained into the Marvel Cinematic Universe because, like, S.H.I.E.L.D's been around since Iron Man. This is literally taking something down to the foundations that's been one of the foundational points of the MCU is, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. are that first big kind of like geek calling card that they used. They kept on like doing the full acronym, and at the end they go like, oh, just call us S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's that moment where like the geeks will go like, S.H.I.E.L.D. All of us, yes. And like they gathered them all. They went and got them and put this team together in a room, and now they're gone. And, you know, we'll see going forward that the branding very much, you know, Avengers becomes a brand because S.H.I.E.L.D. can no longer be this thing. And, like, obviously they rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D. in the show. I don't know if it's really referred to much, if at all, in the MCU after this. I don't think it is, really.
The only reference to the show, or the only tie into the show, really, after this point, is the end of Age of Ultron. The last time that, like, anything to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. is really mentioned. Like, there's no S.H.I.E.L.D. agents really in any movies beyond this point, other than Nick Fury and Maria Hill kind of like being around and stuff like that. Maybe it comes up in Civil War, but even then it's more to do with the fact that, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone. we've now got someone else in charge of, like, the American government's arm into what the Avengers mean.
Stuff not as big as the Hydra reveal, but they changed the design of the helicarriers at Stark's request because he almost got killed by one of their engines.
He got an up-close look, as Nick Fury says.
That's very cute. They bring back Senator Stern, Gary Shandling being a gross pervert.
Rest in peace.
His last live-action role, maybe? I don't know.
Don't want to commit, but
one
like
them,
it's a very memorable final role. The fact that, like, he was good fun in Iron Man 2, but, like, this is the one that I think of when I think about Gary Shandling's time in the MCU, is just this awful moment where he's, like, coming out of the Senate building and just, like, he keeps on trying to get close to to the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and then just goes like, "Hail Hydra!"
I was like, oh. We're in a secret club. Yeah, that's all great stuff. That you mentioned that scene. Jasper Sitwell, next to Emiliano Hernandez, is revealed to have been a Hydra agent. This is his 5th outing, which is crazy. And he name drops Stephen Strange. He name drops the Hulk. We've seen Hulk already, so that's not a big deal. But, you know, they call out Stephen Strange pretty early, which, you know, made the whole making a timeline thing a bit difficult, but someone out there did it. Did you know, you probably did, this was going to be Coulson before they decided to kill him in the Avengers? Imagine what a fucking ripping your heart out moment that would have been if Coulson was in Hydra.
I didn't actually know that they were going to do that. I
mean, I would imagine this is, like, long before, because how could they do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. starring Clark Gregg if it turns out Clark Gregg is in Hydra? But, yeah, that was... They wanted it to be Coulson.
I almost think that would have been a better use of him than him dying in Avengers in some ways.
Probably.
I do think...
He's so nice, and he probably could have done that acting-wise. He's got the chops for that.
Because Jasper Sitwell, like, he's been on the edges, and, like, they had him in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a couple of times over the first season, but I think that's on a tangent. Like, the weirdest moment of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is when I was watching it, I got to the point where he was showing up, like, quite regularly, and then Winter Soldier happened, and then immediately afterwards he doesn't show up again, and I actually said, like, what happened to Jasper Sitwell, forgetting, like, that he gets thrown from a moving car by Winter Soldier?
Oh yeah, I forgot, and I watched it last night. I mean, we have some fun with them throwing him off a building and Falcon grabbing him and stuff. Yeah, that's all good stuff. But yeah, the continuity there is nice. So there's a scene where Arnim Zola, Toby Jones, is revealed to be alive in a computer. Pretty goofy. They wanted to go all the way and have him have, like, a robotic body, and Marvel said no. So that's nice that they know their limits.
I mean, it's like they do tease the suit in First Avenger.
Yeah, they do.
But this feels a lot more of a piece. Like, I really like, this is one of those, like, villain switches where, like, this is something goofy as hell that you don't think they'd be able to do, much like Batroc, and they actually find a way that, like, it's not realistic, but, like, it feels of a piece and a very logical kind of, like, let's take this goofy ass Jack Kirby villain and turn it into something that harks back to that but doesn't break the universe by existing.
So he provides the exposition on Hydra having taken over S.H.I.E.L.D. from within, and I do like that he's not monologuing to be an idiot villain, but he's doing it to stall for time because there's a drone strike coming or whatever. But during this little exposition scene, I don't know if this was always planned. I guess it was, because it's quite a strong implication, but when they are kind of showing about Bucky on the screen, they cut from a shot of Bucky firing a gun, and then the very next thing is Howard Stark's death in a newspaper. And I guess they are outright saying, yeah, he killed him. But then that's going to be a very...
They definitely do.
That's a very important moment in Civil War that feels like... It's like a surprise, but you go, oh, well, obviously. But I was surprised to look back at this and see it's as explicit as that. But
they've got the bit in Civil War where, like, Tony turns to Cap and goes, like, did you know this? And Cap goes, yes. And this is the reason. This is the reason why he knows. Is because he
Cat
saw
never
this.
lies as well.
It's weird because like he doesn't react to it in the moment, but like it is canon in that he saw this and acknowledged that he knows that Bucky killed Tony's parents.
Nick Fury, briefly is dead. He is revealed to be alive. He used an injection that he says Banner developed to deal with stress, and it didn't work, but it manages to slow his heart to 1 beat per minute. I think that's a nice way to keep... It's nice to just keep acknowledging that the other characters exist without having to make them all show up and say hello, or be like, oh, he's off in wherever right now. So I do like that. So we'll run down the cast in a second, but I do want to just give a shout out to some of the comedy moments in this film. As I said, it isn't just action and drama, there is some nice levity. Superhero movies that get too self-serious are not good, in my opinion. And I think they do a good job of giving you some jokes while not making it a full-on comedy movie. Right from the start, Falcon and him bonding and on your left, and no polio is great. That's all pretty good stuff. I like their relationship generally, actually. Like, if we just want to talk about those two, I like that they bond over their experiences as soldiers and your bed is too soft and all that, and it feels like a realistic friendship, and that they happen to cross paths and he needs it. It's all just good. And Cap remembering the story about his friend and stuff like that. It's it's forced in terms of here's a brand new character and they just have to be best friends now. But in terms of these characters interacting, I think it's all really well done. And it is born from that initial funny moment of, they're just dudes doing laps of a lake, and Cap, because he's superhuman, outruns him constantly.
Yeah, I think it's nice, as you said, them bonding over the bed thing is the experience of soldiers are still fundamentally the same. It doesn't matter what era they're from, it's still going to a high-stress area and then taking them home and expecting them to be good at being home again.
Yeah.
It doesn't deal with PTSD or anything like that in any particular way, but it's good that it's got a sense that this thing exists and is very real, and you do get the moment of the veterans kind of meeting that the movie's aware of these kind of things, and it doesn't ignore them, but we are dealing with people who have to excel in that kind of area.
They got very good at one thing, and then they were asked to stop doing that thing, and it's well, what do I do now? I think that's all really good. Fuck it, let's just talk about the cast. Anthony Mackie as Falcon. Michael B. Jordan tried out for this and didn't get it, and I could not be more glad he didn't, because I am 2 days away from seeing Black Panther, and it looks like he's going to be fucking awesome in it. So I'm glad he failed here. Anthony Mackie spammed Marvel with a ton of emails asking for a role in the film, and Kevin Feige said, you know what, sure. So it turns out, if you email Marvel a bunch, they will eventually show the emails to Kevin Feige, and he will put you in a movie. So everyone, go. Start requesting to be in movies.
I mean, you might have had to have been in a movie with Eminem at some point in the past.
He just brings a lot of energy and enthusiasm to this, and it kind of gives it a nice little injection of fun. You can tell that, if you watch any of the behind-the-scenes stuff, clearly he gets on really well with everyone. And
it's good that they get someone who's got as good chemistry with Chris Evans as they get. He doesn't ever get bigger than what he's asked to do, but the fact that they actually have someone who you want to see show up again in later movies, because he's got such good chemistry with Evans, and it's a chemistry that they really, really exploit in Civil War. It's got this really nice foundation in this one where and that's kind of all you really need. At points in Iron Man 2, you kind of feel that the chemistry between Rhodey and Tony is having to be built again after Iron Man 1, whereas this one they come straight out of the gates, and it's Bucky's in a different position in this one, but we still have that kind of sidekick friend here, and it doesn't need to be hammered home because it feels so natural.
Yeah.
In this one for so much of it.
Yeah, for sure. And he wanted to have the full-on red spandex costume and be over the top. It's that's cool, you wanted to do that. I'm glad they went a slightly more realistic way. I think his costume will get much better when it's an actual costume and not just the wings that he used experimentally with the Stark logo on them. Cute.
I kind of wish they stunt cast the friend. They showed the picture of him, it's just that could have been someone. That could have been a fun little oh, you come in for a day and just wear a little suit thing, but no, it's just...
It's Leonardo DiCaprio.
God, could you imagine?
Yes. So it feels weird to have talked about him first, but Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, incredibly solid performance. He trained a ton in all the martial arts, it shows. And he just... I feel there isn't you don't need to say much because he's just perfect. Like he is physical, he is funny, he is emotional. He doesn't dominate the screen in a Robert Downey Jr. way like other people get a chance to play. And he's just so good.
Yeah, like this is. It doesn't feel like he's having to, like, there's nothing quite as stunty as the whole, like, oh, he's a little person in Captain America, and there's nothing, he's not sharing the screen with so many big personalities as he's in Avengers. Chris Evans is like one of those really underrated actors that he makes an ensemble better, even whilst he's leading it. Like, you could tell he's the lead, he's got the kind of, like, features to be a lead, but he doesn't get in the way of the other actors in the movie in the way that, like, you get with ensembles. Like, it's something he showed off in Snowpiercer as well, where that movie is an ensemble, and Chris Evans is absolutely terrific in it, but he himself does not overshadow anyone else in the movie. He is a team player, and he makes everyone who gets to do a scene with him is better because he has a charm and a chemistry with pretty much everyone in this movie, and it's really well appreciated, but also something that's like, it's not as flashy. It's in that way that, like, awards are not often given to people who aren't doing something big, aren't doing something kind of like, oh, look.
Yeah, like a signature scene, like like trailer bait scenes.
Yeah, exactly. But then this is just, he is good throughout and really helps make everything work. Yeah. Which is, for a movie like this, which lives and dies on whether or not, like, you believe that the person at the centre of it is whiter than white. Yeah. Is something really difficult to play. Like, this character, like, in a lot of ways, like, Superman and Captain America are very similar in that if you do this wrong, they're not very interesting because they're always going to win, and you have to make it feel like there is tension here. And I think Chris Evans exemplifies that really, really well. Yeah,
he's doing this job. Like, it's not like blow away, like, oh my god, he's acting in this one scene. But he's nailing his character brief. Like, you know, you say he's like Superman, he's like Superman in another way, like you were saying, he makes everyone better. That kind of old school Superman mentality where he is nice to everyone. He walks the line between patronising and just being a good human. Like, you know, he treats everyone the same kind of thing. Like his allies, he bigs them all up, and both Chris Evans, the performer, and Cap, the character, are doing that, and it's good stuff. He is joined by Scarlett Johansson, who's back as Black Widow. They have great chemistry. Again, they wrote a lot of the dialogue for their scenes together themselves, which is nice. They are obviously incredibly contrasted in that Cap doesn't lie, and he is who he is, and she is a mega spy who lies and probably kills and all sorts of things. And they get a lot of little scenes where she's like needling him about asking out different women, and it all kind of comes to a head in theory. We were talking about comedy, and I will bring it back here with this. They go to an Apple store to try and decrypt this USB stick, and Steve trying to blend in as a hipster is lovely.
And just him being confused, like, she's doing all this spy stuff, like, kind of like, kiss me, so pretend I said something funny, or just laugh. Like, it's all these little moments where, like, she's happy to teach him how to be duplicitous, and he gets it. But, like, even after the kiss scene where she goes, like, am I the first person you've kissed?
Yeah, since 1945. Yeah. And he says no, but I'm saying Cap's a virgin.
But yeah, it's like really nice. I think Scarlett Johansson like really nails the kind of funny stuff and the banter with Steve, and the action is obviously like off the charts in so many ways. Her
and her double are amazing. Like she sings the praises of her double no end if you watch any of the behind the scenes stuff. But there's you take exception to a certain aspect of her portrayal here, don't you?
It's just weird in that, like, it feels like there are some scenes where she's still warming up to the role again. Like, it feels like kind of Joss Whedon came in and, like, made this fully formed character and actually, like, made it something better than Iron Man 2. And there are moments where she's kind of playing the duplicitous spy where you're not supposed to understand what her motivations are, that I just feel like she doesn't quite nail. Like, those moments where, like, she is obviously, like, on the side of Cap, and, like, they are being buddy-buddy are, like, really, really good. But the moments where, like, you kind of go, like, ooh, whose side is she on? I'm just not sure she nails them quite as much as she probably could do.
Yeah.
Like, she's fantastic in, like, everything else in this movie, but it's the stuff where you don't know if she's good or bad that I'm just kind of going, like, do we need this? Do we need to have the kind of conversation between Natasha and Steve just kind of going like, oh, I don't know if I can trust you kind of thing. Like, I don't know what you were doing on the boat if you weren't doing what I needed you to do, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't quite sit. I would rather it be a kind of like, they trust each other and he has an ally on the inside, and like his tentativeness is aimed at Fury and Fury alone. But yeah, like that's the only quibble I have with this performance. Is like I think she nails the comedy, I think she nails the action, I think she's terrific when she's in disguise at the end of the movie, which I'm sure you want to talk about.
No, I do. But we'll get there. She wears a little arrow necklace at times throughout, and I think that was actually her idea, and that's so cute, the little Hawkeye nod, because at this stage I don't think anyone but Joss Whedon knew about the farm, but we'll get there. It's just a nice little character detail. So as a rival for Cap's affections, if Black Widow is even in contention for them, Emily Van Camp as Agent 13. And I was thinking to myself, do they ever explicitly call her Sharon Carter? But then I remembered she does confirm this in Civil War.
She does.
Okay, so she is... In the comics, at one point, she was Peggy's daughter, and then I think she...
No.
I swear
she was
at one...
sister.
Oh, she was her sister at one point, okay. And then it became niece. They retcon that. And in this, she's her great niece. Anna Kendrick auditioned for this role. Felicity Jones auditioned for this role. Imogen Poots, Amelia Clark, Jessica Brown Finley, Teresa Palmer, Elizabeth Olsen, Alison Brie. Alison goddamn Brie. We could have had the community gathering. They all were either considered or auditioned or in the running for this. I don't know why they chose Emily Van Camp.
Emily Van Camp was under contract with ABC at the time on Revenge.
Yeah, he talks about how good she is in Revenge, and it's I didn't watch Revenge, it didn't seem great. I remember her from Everwood with Chris Pratt, but there's nothing to this character at all. It's they do almost the first two things she does are cool. It's they have a nice little meet cute in the hallway, and then, she's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and she lives there because Fury told her to. That's cool. Bye! And
then she gets to come back in at the end of the movie. It's almost we forgot we have this actor under contract and we need them to do something.
She is such a weird one because, she comes back in Civil War and I think she's better there, but that film is way too crowded. She's not coming back, I don't think. Or if she is, she hasn't been mentioned. But she's kind of this weird little black mark in Marvel.
Yeah, we've cast this person in multiple roles. We want them to be a love interest, but we've manoeuvred this character into a place where he doesn't really need a love interest. Captain America, the female relationship he has with Black Widow is way more interesting than any love interest, apart from with Peggy. His relationship with Tony, his relationship with Bucky, his relationship with Falcon are all more interesting and more varied. And it's just we don't need a love interest in every single one of these movies. I get why you do it, because there's this idea that love interests bring in the female market and stuff like that. And it's kind of bullshit, because this movie would get a female viewership regardless of whether or not there was a love story involved in it. But
yeah, because the dishy villain and hero, there's nothing to her at all.
She's not bad, it's just the role is kind of needless, and you kind of wish that they forego the love angle of it and just had her be undercover S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who we meet earlier on in the movie, and then because we need someone else on the inside to have that hero moment. I get what the arc is. I just feel the arc is muddled when you introduce her as a love interest for Cap.
Yeah. So speaking of female S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Kobe Smulders is back as Maria Hill. I just really want her to take off as Maria Hill, and I feel it's just never going to happen. Because we get the whole fake out with Nick Fury being dead for I don't know, an hour, maybe less. I feel it might have done her the world of good if they hadn't brought him back in this movie, but he does such good work, I can't really be mad at them. But if she'd got to be Maria Hill in charge of what remains of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the rebuilding of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a movie or two or three, and then he comes back, but she's still in charge. I think that's a dynamic they even had in the comics at one point, where she assumes control even though he's still alive. But she just never really gets to... She's always there, and she's an actress that you just inherently like, but it's just, when will it happen for her? I don't think it will.
Yeah, I remember thinking the most logical thing is for her to become a regular agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. after How I Met Your Mother ended.
I guess she doesn't really want to do TV again.
Yeah, that's the thing, is she probably doesn't want to do TV again, but you can also tell why they didn't do that. It's because they blew up S.H.I.E.L.D. at the end of the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So.
Sure did. And she did her cameo in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So.
She did. It is weird. She's only ever in movies that Nick Fury's in, and Samuel L. Jackson's always going to overshadow her.
She's just there to disagree with him, but then go along with what he says.
Yeah, exactly. But like, at the time of recording, they've just released the 10-year anniversary photo, which features Kobe Smulders, but doesn't feature Clark Gregg.
He was busy. He was promoting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
But still, he doesn't feature Clark Gregg, which feels very much like Kobe Smulders has like stabbed him in the back and like, I am the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent now.
Fuck you, television. So I mentioned the very dishy villain. We're not going to go into depth on all of them, but there are a big two to talk about, because fuck Frank. Who cares about Frank Grillo?
Frank Grillo cares about Frank Grillo.
Probably, but Josh Holloway was going to do that role, and that would have been better. Sebastian Stan as Bucky. So, my god, is he a handsome man, and he is one of the cooler looking villains that they have done, because, you know, Loki's very over the top and flamboyant and whatnot, but this is just like a badass fighter man. They are
with a metal arm.
Yes, they're good at setting those up. They're not really great at following through on them, and I think, you know, he doesn't do a ton of talking because he's a brainwashed assassin, but he is really good here. And of the kind of 1 versus 1 adversary, rather than 1 versus many type things, he's one of the better ones. And I don't know, I just really dig the fighting style and the look and where they will go with the character. I think in my head I'd overinflated how much he does here in my memory, because I was like, oh, I guess he doesn't.
He is the title character, or the second title character.
Well, is he though? Because I believe you'll find this film is named after Cap, not him. As in the Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
that's Cap. That's not him. Cap is a Winter Soldier. It's the Thomas Paine. Oh, never mind.
No, but Bucky is the Winter Soldier.
No, it's a coincidence. It's a double meaning, because a Winter Soldier is someone who will continue the fight even when times are bad. It's Cap. He is the Winter Soldier. Anyway. I don't know, Sebastian Stan is... I don't know, it's a weird thing. Maybe I'm just blinded by his looks, both in how handsome he is and how cool the character is. But I guess I thought he did a lot more good stuff here. But maybe it's just Civil War bleeding backwards.
Yeah, it's like one of those weird things where I think I tweeted this out after I watched the movie, which is basically that I think Sebastian Stan is good at like being the more human side, and I think the Winter Soldier is this great visual and kinetic force in the movie. But I think that a lot of the emotions with it fall flat by the end, because I think like it feels weirdly shoehorned into like, oh, we need to have a personal reason for Cap to be invested in this, when it feels enough to have Cap be invested in it because it's the US government doing something really, really evil to the citizens of the world.
Yes.
It feels like they wanted to do Winter Soldier, and then they had this great idea for a story, and they were just like, oh, well, how do we keep bringing Winter Soldier back into this? Yeah. And I think it works. I think like overall the trilogy of like the story of Bucky across the 3 movies is really, really good. I just think that when the emotional climax of this movie is Cap getting through to Bucky, it kind of feels like, I mean, he only found out that he was Bucky at the end of Act 2.
It does feel very rote, very forced, kind of like, remember who you are.
It's definitely not as bad as like other villains have been, because this villain has an arc and he has an emotional payoff, and like he's one of the very few villains that actually gets to come back and feel like part of a universe, but it still is my least favourite part. Pulling
his strings is Robert Redford as Alexander Pierce. He is Nick Fury's boss, essentially. Who knew he had one? Took this role out of kind of amusement and curiosity about, you know, how they make these modern big budget superhero movies, and I think he's got grandchildren who like them and stuff, so he was like, yeah, fuck it. And they offered it to him as an homage to the work he did for the genre, the political thriller genre, I should say, not the superhero genre. I don't know. He threatens to become one of those older legendary actors who you feel a bit sad for because they're just a bit wobbly. He doesn't ever quite go there, but it's just there are times when he's doing his scenes, you're like, oh, Robert. But then there are other times I think he is genuinely quite good. I think they do good stuff with the character, like he is inspired to do everything he did because of a little story he had about Nick Fury that he interpreted one way and Nick Fury interpreted another, with Nick kind of ignoring the orders in order to do what is right, and he takes that to an extreme and he wants to murder everyone. I don't know, he's not awful.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where like so much of it relies on your knowledge of who Robert Redford is.
Yeah.
To kind of work on that level. Like, Robert Redford's great, and I think this is, like, up to this point, probably the biggest get that Marvel have had.
Yeah.
Because, like, Robert Downey Jr. wasn't, like, a get, but, like, when you announced we're doing Winter Soldier with Robert Redford, you kind of go, like, you actually sit up and go, like, what? This feels like kind of big for people who are fans of film. Like, this feels like a big moment, but it suffers from that kind of the issue you get when you do a movie where for the first half of it you think the bad guy is the good guy, and because at some point you have to return and you have to do an explanation for it, but because you spent the first half of the movie kind of like making them seem like the good guy, it always feels like it's surprising, but you don't actually get to give them much depth because they don't get to spend enough time being actually villainous because they're being altruistic to start with. It's a similar problem that like Jeff Bridges had to deal with in Iron Man 1, where like you think he's on the side of Tony, but he's not actually, and then the turn happens and it's what came beforehand, but it just makes you feel like you haven't actually got to spend time with what the true machinations of the character are.
I think it's a difficult role to play, as you said, and he's doing what he can. I like when he murders his housekeeper because she sees Bucky sitting at his kitchen table. It's like, Jesus, man. That's all good stuff. Cameos, wow. We have a wealth of them. Stan Lee is a museum security guard. Ed Brubaker is a scientist helping work on Bucky. Joe Russo plays a doctor. Marcus and McFeely play S.H.I.E.L.D. interrogators. Joss Whedon is walking around the Smithsonian. But the big ones for me... Oh, DC Pearson is an Apple Store employee. He's a comedy dude, works with Donald Glover. So take your pick. You got Danny Pudi as S.H.I.E.L.D. employee sitting at a console and opening a door behind which Cap is standing. And when that scene happened, I lost my fucking mind because I was sitting next to a dude who loves Community. It was I guess we went at a weird time to see this movie because the crowd, the people in the cinema with us, they were pretty flat for it, and just we were the only two reacting to this, and we're just quietly losing our minds while everyone else is like, oh, a dude. And I just, nice little nod from the directors.
Yeah, it's that good kind of cameo which doesn't intrude on the movie, but if you get what's happening, you're kind of like freaking out a little bit.
Yeah,
but luckily, I also got to go with Community fans, and we all had a little bit of a moment when it happened as well. So that was good fun.
The big one. So we see the World Security Council. We saw two of them before, Jenny Agutter and Alan Dale. They are joined this time by Chin Han and Bernard White.
No, Powers Booth is the one in Avengers.
Oh, okay, my bad. Okay, so Jenny Agutter was in it before, and it's important that Jenny Agutter was in it before because Jenny Agutter's in it again, and she does motherfucking martial arts before being revealed to be Black Widow wearing some magical mask that will come back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Again, lost my fucking mind because I feel that me and this friend were the only two people who knew who Jenny Agutter was, and oh my god. I know it's like heavily like, it's a double and all that, but just for that brief moment, seeing Jenny Agutter do martial arts on people was a joyous world I got to live in. I mean, the way we kind of assess all of these movies, we look at the villains, we look at the third act, and I feel this is a pretty damning indictment of that criticism in that this movie is so good, but the villains are kind of done by committee, wherein, you've got a cool fighter, you've got a gross dude, you've got a kind of menacing henchman, you've got a scheming senator, you've got a mad scientist, and then you've got the sort of the emotional, the rival kind of thing. All of those are like fine things to do, but I don't think any one of them nails it enough to make it so that you're like, oh man, the villain's in that movie. Because Bucky like goes places, and like they are building something with Bucky that I think tremendously pays off, but just in a bubble, I don't think he's doing anything here that's like phenomenal. I don't think Robert Redford is giving a good enough performance to be like a great villain. I don't think Frank Grillo leaves any impression whatsoever.
Yeah, I always come out of the movie and I think about the other henchman that looks kind of similar to Frank Grillo more than I think about Frank Grillo.
I know. Oh god, and they try and make him a big deal by bringing him back. It's like no one remembers Frank Grillo, and you've scarred his face. So how good was it?
Yeah, it's a similar villain problem as Iron Man 3 has, where the movie is good in spite of them. Like they try their best, but like nothing really coalesces into a way that makes it feel satisfying on that level. Like the movie is still good regardless, because I think everything else about it works so well and is so in tune that it doesn't matter. But when you get the fact that the last three movies have been kind of lacking in the villain department, and it's not something that's going to be fixed in the next movie either. Like, this is probably like the heyday of the Marvel don't do good villains. Especially like when you've had like a break for Loki in the middle of like this run of these run of movies.
Yeah, we were spoiled. We were spoiled by Loki. I feel just generally doing Cap in the middle, finding himself in the middle of a big conspiracy and being on the run lets them get away with this, because if it were hinging on Cap versus these particular people, it wouldn't be good. But they don't. I don't think they detract, because they are just sort of pieces in the grand plot of Cap versus Hydra versus S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of thing. So they're not good, but I think it doesn't hurt it.
Yeah, like, it's very much like this is the movie of Cap versus Hydra. This isn't Cap versus the individual parts of Hydra. And I think it being a broader villain makes it work, even if the individual villains don't.
I think what hurts it more is the third act, in that we've done all this really good stuff, this political stuff, you know, the smaller moments, the intimate stuff, the cool fight scenes, and that this boils down to insert 3 keys to win on some helicarriers that are going to carry out a final solution, basically. Like, they talk about cleansing, and it's like, oh my god, I know they're Nazis, but Jesus, guys. And in the middle of that, trying to appeal to Bucky's humanity while, like, these death ships are floating above. It's just... And then, even more than that, like, you know, Nick Fury makes his return, and it's like, oh, his scarred eye is the one that makes the retinal scan work. But then they turn it around briefly. I just thought that was so unnecessary. The moment where Pierce kind of turns the tables on them for a moment with the sort of electric badges or whatever. So you could have just dropped that completely. Like, have Nick Fury come back, punch Pierce or something like that, do the eye scan, done. But it's just not good. It's not satisfying, because it doesn't go along with what we've had before.
But again, like, the movie still works.
It is. It's so good. Like, I feel the first 2 acts do enough to, like, solidify this as a top contender. It's just, you can't deny that those 2 criticisms do kind of fit this film.
Yeah, they do. They do, and it's like, because you get the whole thing where, like, Cap has the emotional final fight with Bucky in the helicarrier as he's trying to put in the final key card, and it's just like, I would be more invested in this if it was any other location than on the giant CGI ship that's doing way too big a thing for, like, what this movie's been building up to for the entire time. It's sad, because the movie as a whole is still one of the best things that Marvel's done. Yeah. But it's exactly the same as Iron Man 3, where Act 3 is a step down from the absolutely fantastic first 2 acts that have come beforehand. And, I mean, to be honest, like, endings are hard.
They are.
Like, especially when you are doing superhero movies, or superhero media is perpetually in Act 2. Like, you can't do an Act 3 really in a superhero movie or a superhero comic book. So when you get to doing an Act 3 in a movie or whatever, like, you can't really conclude, because these pieces are probably still going to have to go forward at some point. Yeah. So you can't really ever have a proper ending, and it's what makes it intriguing as we head into the Act 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to find out whether or not they can have a conclusion to this 10-year saga that they've been building up to.
Spoiler alert, they will not. It's tricky. There is a big post-credit scene before we talk about our final piece of business. We get the debuts of some major characters. Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor-Johnson are the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. The scene is directed by Joss Whedon. They are Hydra lab rats, essentially. He's fast, she does psychic stuff. It's a cool little tease, I think. They call them miracles because they can't say mutants. Blah. But, I don't know, it's a nice little piece of foreshadowing. Having the Hydra connection in there makes it work after we've had a mostly realistic movie, except for Robot Men. And we close with, like, crazy powers, but... Hydra are there. They were doing what they were doing before, so I don't know if it bears talking about, but it happens, and it's a massive tease for Age of Ultron.
Yeah, it's one of the better kind of, like, stings that they do, because it actually feels like it's got substance, and it smooths over some of the, like, weirdness of going from this movie into Age of Ultron. Because Age of Ultron kind of opens up very much, and it's kind of like, we are finishing taking down all the Hydra agents, and, like, this post-credit scene just kind of, like, smooth that transition between these 2 movies.
It's true, because
quite nicely.
Because we have Baron Strucker here. He's overseeing that, and he is the guy that they're going for at the beginning of Ultron. So
yeah, it's what I do like when they do. It feels less lazy than when they do that thing where they literally take a scene from another movie and just shove it at the end of something else, like they do in some movies we've got coming up. It feels more substantial. It feels more substantial than when they just do little comedy bits or
yeah. This is what you're looking for, really. Like, it's not too big, it's not just recycling footage, and it's not just silly. Like, this is what you want. You want, like, characters to show up and do cool stuff, and then you're like, oh, I want to see more of that. And she breaks blocks, Ben. She could destroy all of reality if she wanted, but she's just destroying little blocks. So we have a difficult task. Or maybe we don't. Outstanding performance, all Marvel performances. You know, we have been building our little merry cast of the people we feel are giving the best performances in the MCU, so we can assemble our little Hall of Fame in our 10-year retrospective episode. I feel it's either Chris Evans or no one for this, because he is so good throughout all of them. He didn't get it for Cap 1. He didn't get it for Avengers. We're quite a few episodes away from Civil War. I don't know how many picks we'll have left over at that point. I don't know if he's going to get one. So I kind of want to tentatively give him one here. Even though he's not, as we said, blowing anyone away, he is just such a good utility player for them to have. And he's just so solid and underrated that I kind of feel if he doesn't get it here, is he going to get it? Yeah,
I'm of two minds, because the only other person I would throw in the ring would be Sam Jackson.
That's true. He is by far giving his best performance.
He's giving his best performance, and also it's a performance that even if he's ropey or not doing it from the first few movies, like, he still is this indelible part of the tapestry of this franchise. I don't think these movies get as much hype if Sam Jackson doesn't show up at the end of Iron Man and is the character from the comic books that was drawn to look like him. But as you say, like, when we get to Civil War, there's going to be so many people in that movie that you want to honour. But then there's also the point that, like, the one that's sticking out in my mind right now, we've already given one of these prizes to. And so and also I kind of want to give it to Chris Evans just for helicopter scene alone.
Yeah, I mean, we could do them both for now, and, like, you know, we can compare Chris Evans from here.
Do we have a spare going?
I think we do. I think we said no one from Thor: The Dark World.
Oh, we do. We could give it to both of them.
We can give it to both of them.
I like this plan.
I think that we've struggled to nail down the rules of this, but I think a big one is, if you've already got one, every time you come back up, we ask, do you keep your previous one or do you get this one instead? So we can, when we get to Civil War, be like, look, Steve is better here, Tony is better here, and swap them. I don't know if that's going to happen. In my head it is, but we'll see.
Because we're getting into...
This is Marvel, baby.
Yeah.
So tentatively for now, Chris Evans and Samuel L. Jackson?
Yes. I mean, I just think Samuel Jackson isn't going to get it for his next appearance.
Oh God, no! He's never going to come close to getting a nomination again. Like, some of his outings as Nick Fury are woefully bad, but this is really good, and I almost forgot how good this was because of how much, like, 1 or 2 line Nick Fury I've had to see over the last month or 3. So seeing him actually show up and be the Samuel L. Jackson that is a good actor is good. So
yeah.
He's got to get his nod.
Yeah, this is true. And Chris Evans is, as always, great. And a really underrated part of it. Like, I am that guy that, like, in the rankings of the Chris's, like, Chris Evans is my favourite. Like,
he's probably the best. If you take it all into consideration, the acting ability, the handsomeness, the personality. Let's rank all the Chris's. No, let's not do that, because this podcast has gone a long time. Partially because I completely screwed it with the format. I will regroup for next time, because we were talking about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Never heard of it.
No one had until it came out. And that should be fun. That's a movie everyone likes. We can either go along with what people like, or we can tear down a movie people really like. Who knows? In the meantime, go to entertherealworld.com. That's REEL world.com. Film Reel. It is a pun. Thanks, Mike Thomas, for having a non-audio pun. Listen to everything from Broadcast Depth is our last podcast. Me and Mike might eventually get around to have done a Tape Crusaders episode by now. I don't know. It's hard. We're working on a weird timeline. We're going to be doing Black Panther as the next recording, but you're not going to hear that for like 10 weeks or something. So I'm very excited. Ben's very excited. Let's get out of here so we can go see Black Panther. Goodbye, everybody. I've been Matt. He's been Ben. Don't trust anyone. They're all secretly Nazis.
Hell Hydra.